Okay. Questions on what we covered this morning? Anything confusing or controversial or? Yeah.
I hope not to be controversial. Baptism, as you mentioned this morning, is the first act of obedience.
Yeah.
When one is first saved, we were all first saved once there was lots of confusion, lots of misunderstanding of what things actually meant. That doesn't make our faith not saving faith, right?
Correct.
Well, there's lots to learn.
Yeah.
For what reason, then, would we be hesitant to baptize our younger people?
Ooh.
I don't want this to be controversial.
It's great. Let me.
Not baby. I'm not saying babies.
No. I understand. Let me. I'm going to make a qualification. This is something we've been having some discussions among the elders. I'll be happy to share with you my thoughts and insights, and I want to make it distinct from whether or not we've come totally to one mind on this. The short answer, I think, is because by the very nature of a child's profession of faith, even we recognize we're not willing to take it as totally credible. I'll back that up in a moment. So some of my kids have made professions of faith. I hope they certainly could be valid. They certainly may prove to be valid, and they may not. One of my kids gets saved every year. Makes a profession of faith and is tearful, and we cry. And last time she did that, I said, "That's awesome. What do you think's different this time than last time?" And so there's a nature of kids that they'll believe everything you tell them. There's a nature, like if you tell them a large, fat, white man comes down their chimney every year, they'll believe that too. And so I think it's probably good. I tend to think of my home as a greenhouse for the faith of my kids. And so what I've told Abner, who I think I see fruit. Like, you tell me when you're ready to stand up. But the big notion in my mind with the kids, and why I'd be hesitant, is this. If Abner's going to stand in front of you all, it's without my mediation. I can't get between him and you, right? And so he's going to stand up and address you, and in that sense, as a man. And I think he could do that at a very young age. But I also, and I'll just go as far as I've thought this through, think that means if you're going to receive his testimony, you need to receive his testimony, receive him as a brother, with everything that entails, which I think also then means you have the right, if he is rude to you, to say, "I need to go confront my brother." And if I attempted to say, "Well, talk to me, I'll deal with Abner," I think if he stood up and confessed his faith, and you've received that, I think you could rightly say, "No, he's my brother before he's your son. He'd be my brother before he's my son." This is Jesus, who's my mother, my brother, my kids, right? My parent. So that's part of the significance of, like, okay, Abner, are you ready for these people to hold you to what you're saying? Are you ready for these people to treat you fully as a Christian with everything that entails? He'd like some more time to sort of get his roots a little deeper. So if somebody had their eyes wide open and is ready for that, personally, I'd be fine with that. I just want to make that my concern, and part of what I was saying this morning, and I think you guys may have seen this in the past, is you'll get somebody baptized as a kid, and there's a lack of clarity. Are we now to treat them like a believer? Truly. What happens when they start acting stupid in their teens? Am I still supposed to treat them like a believer? What significance is there to the fact that I heard you confess your faith in Christ, and now you're seeming to wander after the world? I think, from my thinking, as I'm working through this, is if you're going to get up there and stand there, you ought to expect these people to hold you to what you said. And mommy and daddy can't jump in between all of a sudden. So that's part of my thinking on where I'm at with my kids and hesitating with that. That was a conversation I had with Aiden when he came forward to get baptized. I said, "Look, I just want to understand you on the same page. That, if you were fooling around and broke my car windshield, your dad wouldn't be able to interpose himself. I could rightly say, no, I need to talk to Aiden. He's my brother, and he's done me wrong." And whereas right now, I'd think I have the right to do that. If Sophie broke your windshield, and you like, "Well, on earth, Jeremy, I'll deal with it. I'll deal with her. I'll make it right. I'll fix your windshield. Let me handle it." I think I'd have the right as a parent right now to interpose myself. I don't see how I could do that legitimately if she stood up on her own confessed her faith and you've received that, I think she's saying, I'm your sister, and you guys, by amen, are saying, yes, you are our sister. At that point, that's kind of my thinking. We're talking through this. I'm not sure if what I just said represents what all the elders think. So that's in part my answer. Interface with that some, but that's kind of my thinking is,
Sure. And I all that makes a lot of sense. My only fear is you have a young person who has in their mind at least, a very real profession of faith.
Yeah.
And you see the Bible saying, and you hear your pastor saying, your first act of faith is being baptized. Hey, I want to be baptized.
Yeah.
And there's pushback. Hey, maybe you don't just yet. That can be confusing, I guess.
Sure. No, totally. So when we have parents with kids, the first thing I do is make sure they really understand the gospel. There'd be two phases to my baptism. And I'm totally open to, I would totally consider a 5-year-old. I just would want to make sure two things. Do you actually understand the gospel beyond Christian cliches, beyond bumper sticker theology? And if there's confusion there, like, hey, this is great. Go working at that. So I'll ask, I'm not trying to trick them up trick questions, but trick questions they can't just say Jesus to. Why can you go to heaven? Well, because of Jesus. Why? Are you a sinner? Yeah. So then why isn't God going to punish your sin? Well, because Jesus died. How does Jesus' death mean God doesn't have to punish? I'm looking for them to say something. Well, he bore my sin. Mm-hmm. And frequently with kids, they'll be like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, this is great. You should keep working at that. That's awesome. We'll talk to you in a couple months or whatever. Like, great. So the first is, do you actually understand the gospel? And then the second would be, what do you understand yourself to be doing? And that second question of what exactly is entailed in someone standing up publicly is something the elders need to talk more about. I've shared more of some of my thoughts on it, and even my thoughts are still forming. Like, my cement's wet enough to not be 100%. That's kind of where I'm leaning, is kind of like, I think I'd like to see, like right now, our bylaws, because our bylaws focus on membership fundamentally as a means of voting. If you read our bylaws, it's really about who gets to vote. You can't be a member unless you're 18. You know what I mean? I'd like to see 16-year-olds be members of this body. They can't, non-voting members. Let's not change our constitution. But I'd like to get back to that union of baptism and being welcomed into the body. But then the flip side is with all that entails. I mean, that's my pushback to my Presbyterian friends who baptize their kids. My kids are Christian. You excommunicate your kid, the 2-year-old, because they're throwing tantrums? Then if not, they're sort of a Christian. What you're saying is you'll treat them sort of like a Christian. And so my whole thing is like, it's a package deal. All the benefits, all the blessings, all the responsibilities of being a Christian, are they your child's? And my Presbyterian friends are emphatically saying no if I press them on that. You know what I mean? Sure. So I want to do, but then their response to me is, well, you just baptize all your kids when they're 3 instead of when they're born, and you won't treat them like Christians either. So my response is like, maybe when you're ready to be treated fully like a Christian, come forward and get baptized. And I think there's room for a place of like this greenhouse where the roots are getting set up, and who knows. But if one of my kids just said, no, I think I need to do this, I need to be obedient, and they understood the gospel, I wouldn't say no. I just my whole thing is make sure you got your eyes wide open, you understand what you're doing. You're asking a bunch of people, because not only are we baptizing you, we're baptizing you with a bunch of people present. Do you get the significance of that? What's the significance of 150 people hearing what you have to say? Is you're inviting them to hold you to that.
So it's more of a protection for the young person who wants to be baptized, as opposed to because
just make sure you understand what you're doing.
Yeah, partly I wondered if there was like what if we baptize someone and when they get older they walk away, and now we've baptized a non-believer, and is there a fear of that or something? But
there's precedent for that. Rebaptism, we'll look at Acts 19 in a minute. Sure, Acts 19, we got a precedent for that. That's fine. We baptize people who give evidence that they're Christians. We don't know who the elect are. We don't have like a regeneration detector, but we baptize those we have reason to believe are regenerate, born again, because of their confession of their mouth and because their lives aren't portraying that confession. I wouldn't even like insist on seeing good works, but we wouldn't knowingly baptize someone who's in unrepentant sin. We'd be like, but where someone's confession is orthodox and when their life isn't contradicting that, we baptize them. And We do it in faith. But so no, it's partly in like you said, it's partly, well, it's twofold: to protect the person and to protect baptism, so it doesn't just become something cute you do. You know, you're going to be hard pressed to find a 2 or 3 or 4 year old who isn't going to want to please mommy and daddy and say they're a Christian. You know, and yet if you as a parent, the people around them, and that'd be the other part, if you as the parents around them see the confirming signs and fruit, that's also significant. So if you had a kid who wanted to be baptized, I'd ask you and your wife, like, what do you think? You're their closest neighbor. What do you see? You're like, no, I really see a change. I think, okay, dude, let's talk. But yeah, so it'd be in part as a protection for the youth, and in part a protection of not turning baptism just to a sentimental rite of passage when you're 4 or 5. You know, it's a significant thing to say I'm a follower of Christ. And in the first century, I mean, think of it this way: you'd have to be just as ready to let your kid be marked out by the Jews in the first century in publicly getting baptized, and all that would entail. There'd be a thinking through of the counting of the cost of, I'm going public. You know, there's a reason why the early church had to sell everything so that they could care for everybody, because people were starving and had no property and no jobs because they were known to be Christians. So if Abner coming publicly to get baptized meant the community at large to be hostile to him, I'd be having to factor that in as well. You know, like we can talk more. I don't know. No, it's a great question.
Yeah, and I just wanted to. Yeah. I buy in completely to your arguments. I do fear a little bit of the discouragement for the young people. You know,
well, I have the same talk with my kids because I don't let them take communion.
Yeah.
And so they've asked me, why don't we take communion? And I've said, well, it's a sign. Do you know what the sign signifies? The sign signifies the continuation of life. Baptism marks the beginning of life, an inception, and communion pictures the ongoing nature of that life. Do you think these things are true of you? Are you willing? And I'd say, have you been baptized? You willing to do that? As I've talked through that with my kids, they've not been as much discouraged. I'm like, take all the time you want. You're in my house right now. Well, you can. I'd encourage them, like, figure out what you really settle in your heart, what you want to do. You're part of my household. You're under my roof. Work through these things. Figure out what you believe. Take your time. And whenever you think you're ready and you want to stand up on your own 2 legs without dad in between you, go for it. But at the same time, take your time. You know, like, there's no rush as you're forming what you believe. That's how I tried to present it. It's look, this is a big deal when you're going to get up and you're going to speak to the body. You know, and you're going to speak as, in some sense, a man or a woman. You know, you're saying something, and they're saying something by receiving your confession. So take your time, think through that. You know, I suppose it could be discouraging. I've tried to just picture that, like, God's given you this place and this time to figure out what you believe, to sort this stuff out, to work through this, and yeah, but. Christina wants to add something. I get your point. I get your point. Okay. No, hold on. Mike's coming. Okay.
It not only sounds a little that it could make the children be discouraged, but in a way it sounds a little dangerous. So when they get older, they can like, oh, I got time. That's like, people say that now, like 18, 20, 30, I got time. I can just do what I want. And you know, it sounds a little scary to push them off like that.
Well, I don't. I try to mix in the fact that, like, look, to my kids at least, while you're not ready to stand up publicly, like, who knows where you're at? Like, I have hopes for where you're at, but really, I wouldn't encourage you to have much confidence until you've sorted this stuff out. If you're still sorting it out, by all means, don't rush, sort it out. But at the same time, then you got to decide what you want to do and who you're going to follow and what your God's going to be and what you're going to build your life on. But once you tell 150 people that's your decision, don't be surprised that they hold you to that. Yeah. Don't be like, okay. So I wouldn't make it safe. My whole thing is like, okay, you guys are sorting stuff out. While you're sorting stuff out, how confident can you be where you're at while you're sorting stuff out? You know, So my daughter's getting saved every year. I mix both in. Like, that's really cool that's really good that you are professing faith in Christ now. It's also concerning that you've done that like 3 times in the last 3 years, claiming you got saved every time, you know, and trying to help her think through, like, what's going to be different this time. And measuring out encouragement with conviction, you know. Okay. This isn't a game. And
that's true.
And this is tough for all parents, I think.
One other thing, I think I would be that daughter of yours that
gets saved every year.
Well, just very emotional.
Yeah.
At a very early age.
Yeah.
I would always go to conferences and church with my grandparents. Out of all of us children, I'd be the only one to go. But I said that to say also, I believe I was saved at an early age of 8.
Yeah.
But I do know that we're all a work in progress. And so I went through a path, of course, but I still felt the Lord drawing me all the time. So I know it's a difficult decision, but I felt at 8, I knew I always wanted to be like in church. If my parents didn't go, if my other siblings didn't go, I always wanted to be there. I always wanted to be surrounded by the word and everything. But I did also have a process, in my teens and all of that.
But I think biblically, and I think in 1 John in particular, we've got some clear and objective markers, the signs that confirm, the signs that accompany salvation over time. And they'd include things like an ongoing pattern of confession of sin, an ongoing pattern of hungering for God's word, an ongoing pattern of wanting to be with God's people because you can talk about the things of the Lord with them. So that's what I'm telling my kids. It's not, so for Sophie, it's not a matter simply of, do you have feelings? Do you have new feelings? Do you see from that last time? So as I'm trying to steward and oversee her confession of faith. Okay, that's awesome. If the Lord has brought you to himself, these are the things you should expect to see in the coming weeks and months. These are the things you should be putting your energies into. I don't want to make it you'll be saved by doing them, but the new birth is evidenced by conviction of and confession of sin. Right. That's not something you have to be made to do. It's something that's coming up in dwelling. The new birth is evidenced by hungering like a newborn babe for the pure milk of the word. The new birth is marked by loving God's children and loving God's people. The new birth is marked by these types of things. And so coming back in a month or two, do you see these things going? No. I mean, so she looks back in the last year and she sees a spark in a week or two and then flatline. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't look like salvation to me. It's not a matter of your emotions. It's the evidences of the Spirit. They're not right. Mystical. And so she's looking back and be like, yeah, for the last 3 years, I had about a good month and then flatline for 11, and then a good month and a flatline for 11. So I agree with you. I don't think it looks like you've been saved. I mean, I don't ever claim to know someone is or isn't saved. I just know you have what the Scripture describes as the confirming marks of salvation, or you don't. So it's not just a matter of one's. Certainly, emotions are a part of it. Conviction of sin is an emotional thing, but there are other objective things that others can see and confirm as well. It's not purely personal, and given some time, it's not a purely personal and inward thing. It will evidence itself. Carol, and then Dean. Did you have your hand up as well, or no? Is it Carol? Okay, Carol.
Okay, Jeremy, I'm going to bring up Acts 16.
Yeah.
You know what I'm going to say.
Do I?
The Philippian jailer. Yeah. Then he brought them up into his house and set food before them. Let me see here. Okay, I'm verse ahead. And he took them the same hour, this is Paul, and washed their wounds, and he was baptized at once, he and the Philippian jailer, he and all his family.
Yeah.
So there you go.
So what's your question? What's the question?
The question is, his whole family may well have included young children.
It may have.
You don't think so, though, huh?
I agree with you. It may have. I don't think building theology on what might have been is a great plan. No, but that's the argument for infant baptism is all the household baptisms, and there's about 4 of them in the New Testament, and they're going to say, surely there were kids here. And I said, don't call me Shirley, and I'm not convinced, No, maybe, but read carefully the Philippian jailer, even there, right? They spoke, verse 32, they spoke the word of the Lord to him, and to all who were in the house. And he took them that same hour of the night and washed their wounds, and he was baptized at once, he and all his family. Then he brought them up into his house and set food before him, and he rejoiced, along with his entire household, that he had believed in God. So these infants are apparently really happy Daddy believed in the gospel. In other words, the entire household is described as having heard the word, believed, baptized, and rejoicing that the gospel is preached. So at a certain age of youth, I'm saying, my twins aren't rejoicing because I heard and believed something. And they're 2.5 years old. So what's stated of these people suggests a little bit more age. Because it's the entire group heard, the entire group rejoiced, the entire group was baptized. So I would actually say the text moves away from really young children, because it seems unusual for really young children to get excited that Dad heard a message and believed it. It's possible. I mean, I don't know how old you have to be to comprehend Dad heard something and is excited about it, but the household was able to do that. So the markers in the text that I see suggest not infants in the home, but Jake?
I might submit that seeing a radical change in your father's behavior, unless you can conceptualize and understand it as a small child, might be odd or even alarming. Like, Dad is suddenly excited about this thing.
This is too soon for that to happen, because it's concurrent with them putting food before Paul. So sure, over the coming days and weeks, the kids might pick up Dad's changed. This rejoicing is with the giving of Paul and Silas food. Right. It's entirely cognitive. It's entirely conceptual. They understand a concept, and they understand the significance of that concept and what it means for Dad and for presumably for Mom. There has not been time for significant life-altering change to occur in the Philippian jailer. So whoever's rejoicing is rejoicing nearly entirely as a result of understanding concepts and abstract thought. This is why the first thing to do with these things is just read through them carefully, because a number of things are credited to him and his household. Him and his household were taught the word. Him and his household were baptized. He and his household rejoiced at dinner time that night. So I just want to plug in, okay, if that could be an infant in the baptized, was the infant rejoicing? That's all I'm doing is plugging that.
I just brought that up because I know that's a passage that's used
totally
often in that regard, and I knew you'd have a great answer. And what kids are capable of is remarkable. John the Baptist is doing things in utero I would not normally think in utero children are doing, rejoicing that he's in the presence of the Messiah. Okay. Apparently John the Baptist can do that. Fair enough. So I don't want to be too dogmatic. I'm just saying, from what I know of people, I would expect these to be older, not younger children, if there are children. And it's also entirely possible all his kids are grown. I mean, we simply don't know the age of the people in his household. So I'm just hesitant to build theology off of, well, perhaps. Anyway, yes.
Kind of switching gears a little bit. I always just find it interesting and maybe more encouraging than it should be, the story of the criminal on the cross.
Yeah.
Right? Didn't have the opportunity to hop down and get baptized and join a church and all that kind of stuff. Clearly, it speaks to the fact that baptism isn't salvation and isn't required for that moment of salvation.
Although the people that argue for baptism regeneration have a response to that.
Oh, yeah.
When is the new covenant inaugurated? Jesus' death. Jesus' death. This is the cup of the new covenant in my blood. So Jesus purchases the new covenant with his blood, with his death. The thief on the cross sneaks in just before the death. Would be the response.
Sure. Yeah, I didn't really have a big question about it. I just was curious to hear you talk about this in context.
Well, no, and this is where we fall on two sides of things. We can make the sign the thing itself, which we should not do. And we can view the thing, because it's only a sign, as being unimportant. I mean, let me say this plainly and clearly. The New Testament's prohibition of sexual immorality is because those acts in marriage properly are the sign of marriage. In a very real sense, my wedding ring is the sign of my covenant. Because the true sign of the covenant that pictures husband and wife becoming one is not something that should be publicly viewed. So I put this ring on my finger. It's the blasphemy of that sign, and it's not the thing itself. Having sexual intercourse does not make you married. We get this from John 4. There are some people who think that's the case. John 4 is clear. He said, call your husband. She said, I have no husband. Jesus said, you're right. You've had 3, and the man you are having is not your husband. So sex does not equal marriage. But it is, I believe, the sign, the covenant sign of that covenant, and all of the prohibition and all of the God's concern is, I think, linked to how dare you blaspheme the sign of this covenant. So don't think for a second that signs, simply because they're not the thing itself, aren't sacred and holy things. We learned that in Corinth, in 1 Corinthians 11, that because they were not taking the Lord's Supper, a sign, not the thing, seriously, God was killing people in the church, sick and dying. So on the one hand, you can so emphasize the sign that you turn it into a sacrament. And I don't like the term sacrament. I like the term ordinance. And you can start having this view that because it's sacrament, which means a physical means of grace, that's the idea behind sacraments, as most people use the term, that it's doing things. I don't believe it is. But we also want to avoid against the other side, that because it's not necessary for salvation, because it doesn't do the thing, it's completely unimportant. Like, that's nonsense too. And so those are the two ditches in the road we got to guard against, which is so emphasizing the importance that it becomes the thing, or because it's not the thing, it doesn't matter. Woo, Yes, Bennett has a question. What? Oh, you're not done? Sorry. Hold on.
No. Was there one more?
Sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was just talking a lot, and so I forgot.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Okay.
So, you were kind of like talking about in the good and the bad, and you mentioned that in this sermon.
Yes.
Right in the beginning, like right here.
Yep.
It's saying like the Christianity dies as the good and the bad.
It doesn't. No, the gospel divides humanity not into the good and the bad. We're all bad.
Oh,
it divides us between those who are the forgiven and the non-forgiven, the guilty and the innocent, the living and the dead, the sons of God and the sons of Satan. I would not want to say it's the good and the bad. It's the bad and the bad.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No.
My mistake.
No, you're good.
I got the bad part.
Yeah, no. Totally right. Yes.
Good job, Dad.
Yes.
Thank you. Good job.
Yes. Oh.
Right.
Connie and then Rowdy.
Well, this is very simple, but I have a friend that she belongs to the church. I mean, she goes to church all the time. No, but she hasn't been baptized, and she was talking to me and asking me what I felt, and I said, "Well, I said it's not up to me." I said, I would if I, because I was. As soon as I was saved, born again, I wanted to be baptized. But I said, it's up to you. You read the word and pray. Nobody can tell you yourself, but hopefully she'll change her mind, but I don't understand. Huh?
Yeah, no, let me clarify. The person who's untaught is in a this gets back to all scriptures inspired of God for profitable, for teaching, for reproof, for correction, for training in righteousness. Mm-hmm. The person who's not been taught about baptism, the person who's not sure what to make of it, dude, that's why we wouldn't say you can't be a member if you're not baptized. If we could move forward with both at the same time. Like, let's talk through this. But if someone were to say to me, I know Jesus wants me to be baptized, but I don't want to get baptized, I'd say then I'm not sure you're a Christian. If you think Jesus' commands are optional, I'm not sure you think he's God. Where someone knows perfectly well, Scripture calls, I'd view it as no different than God doesn't want me to leave my spouse, or God doesn't want me to get drunk, or God doesn't want me to, anything else God commands, that you're like, but I'm not going to do it. Eventually would become a question of like, Jesus' sheep hear his voice and they follow him. That's not how sheep talk. You're saying I'm not going to, and this is what I've had this conversation. You're saying I might not go to heaven because I'm not baptized. I'm saying your unwillingness to obey Jesus might be evidence of a dead heart. That's what I'm saying. Well, I'm saying you're whatever you fear more, and there can be confusion in all this, and so that's where I'd want to put pressure. Like, do you understand? This isn't a suggestion. This is the command of the risen Christ. You need to fear Him more than you fear whatever else that's bugging you. But if this person is claiming to be a believer, King Jesus says to get baptized. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's I can't make you do it, but I can tell you, if you're a Christian, your king demands it. What are you chuckling at? What?
We refuted those crazy baptism generation people using John.
All right, excellent. Okay, sorry. Go, Connor. Sorry,
would
I
she
interrupted
be not allowed to join the church? That's what I was.
If she was willing to, if she was saying, I haven't been baptized, but I'm open to it, we'd totally move forward simultaneously with that. If someone said, I want to join the church, but I have not and I will not be baptized,
well, I'm hoping
we probably need to keep talking and figure out what's going on here.
That's everybody disobedient.
Right.
Right. So simple. I mean,
Yeah. So if somebody was open to talking and saying, sure, I'm open to it, I haven't thought that dude, we will move forward but both simultaneously, sure. It wouldn't be get baptized and you can be part of this church. But us bringing you into this body and us bringing you to baptism would be moving along the same track. So
it's hard to understand why somebody wouldn't do that. But, if they're afraid.
There's all sorts of reasons. I know people, one of my three sisters, I won't say who, was really just embarrassed about getting wet publicly and standing up and afraid. I get that. Totally get that. And eventually she became convicted, and I need to fear God more than I need to fear people. Awesome, And what?
Well,
sure.
Well, I'm gonna be talking to her. Yeah. So, and I'll keep on.
I mean, so I wouldn't slam press them into, you're not a Christian. I just started bringing pressure, but eventually if somebody's like, I don't care,
do that.
then so I would, like any issue of obedience, if someone was stubborn and dug their heels in enough and long enough, I'd get to questioning their salvation. I wouldn't start there. I'd start with, you understand this is a command, right? What do you think this is? And I'd move along. It wouldn't just be heathen, but yes. Okay, so Rowdy was next. And then Donna. Then Donna, then Serena. Yeah.
All right.
Rowdy?
No, you had mentioned there, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago about you pray regularly, that you are a steward of your children, and that you dedicate them to God, and that you're a steward and they're on loan to you and they're a blessing.
Yeah.
And I affirm that that's biblical, and as far as discouraging your children, they have to be told no constantly. I mean, like, I know mine do. They have to be told no. And I think it's like the taking the taking of communion. It says point blank that if you take it unworthily, you bring damnation upon yourself. Same, and I look at the the baptism. It's serious business, and I believe it's my responsibility to, as a parent and as a steward over these children that belong to God, to watch them and to make certain that the fruit of the Spirit is present in their life before they are baptized, or before. I've been to a church, I've watched 2-year-olds take communion, and I was appalled, I just thought it was crazy. But that's
what do you really think, Rowdy?
I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This is crazy. Like you just read it. The pastor just read it. You bring damnation upon yourself. You just tell me this kid that just learned how to walk should be taking communion. But no, as a parent, you catechize your kid. I mean, we talk to our kids constantly, and just like you said, your kid wants to please you. My oldest daughter, she asks me questions all the time. Dad, what do you, can you explain sin to me? Can you do, this and that and the other? And we sit down and we have conversations. She's old enough now that she can understand things. Yeah. But I don't think that she's saved in the least, because she shows me she's a little reprobate all the time. And so, we'll continue
Vipers and diapers, man.
Yeah, we'll continue to work with her, but, I don't think there's any, if you're a Christian and you have a sound mind and you can read the Bible and you can understand it, I don't think that there's any leeway as far as, like, you have to show me the fruit of the Spirit, and you have, and like you said, you're a minor, you're under my roof, you're under my charge. It's like, if I allow you to do something that's going to cause harm to you, then it's kind of my fault. But that would be my thoughts on it.
So Donna, Serena, Christina, and we have 5 minutes for all that, so we'll see what happens. Okay, Donna.
I just wanted to... This doesn't seem like it's on.
Well, it's not amplified. It's just recording. So speak into it.
Okay. I just wanted to say, when I first got saved, I was in a church baptized as a baby.
Okay.
When I got saved, I didn't really know what happened to me until later on. Yeah. But what I wanted to say is, when I got saved, I just couldn't read enough of my Bible. It was just constant. And as I read my Bible, and as I kept in the church I was in, and realized what I was hearing from the pulpit wasn't what I was reading, it took me a while to get educated before I got baptized. I probably... was a Christian maybe a year and a half before I got baptized. So that's all I wanted to tell you.
And that's why I'm saying the distinction between the one who's not been taught and hasn't been baptized, totally cool, versus, I know my Lord wants me to do this, but I don't want to do it. That's where we would say, I don't think we want to welcome you into membership just yet. We probably need to talk some more. If it's, on the other hand, I don't know. I mean, we see it in Acts 19 where Paul finds the disciples of John who are confused about some issues. He doesn't rebuke them. He just teaches them, and then he baptizes them. So where we would say, no, we're not going to welcome you into membership, would be the person who says, no, I know perfectly well I'm supposed to get baptized, and I won't. Yeah, we probably need to keep talking. Right. That's what we're drawing our circle around. It's not the person who's like, I don't know what to make of this. Like, dude, let's keep talking. Welcome. Awesome. It would be the person who's like, no thanks. Okay. Timothy's going to speak.
So back to the rebuttal that you gave in John, the account of the crucifixion and everything in John 19, it says, so the soldiers came and broke the legs of the first and the other who had been crucified with him. But then they came to Jesus and saw that he was already dead, did not break his legs. So if the first and the one that was crucified with him were the criminals, then they were actually not the last ones under the old covenant. They were the first under the new covenant. So.
No, I don't disagree with you, so I'm not going to argue the point.
Well,
fair enough.
No. Yeah. No argument, but we all just need to know that, so when we encounter those folks, we can turn to John.
It's a beautiful...
Yeah.
It's just funny because we were both looking for it without knowing it.
Okay.
Hey, Christina, I'm coming. I'm right here for you.
Okay.
I guess my question could probably be answered offline, because I just wanted to help ministering to someone that's unchurched. Know, instead of Hebrews 10, and I just wanted to find out from you. But can I just say something about what he just said? Yeah. Even though Jesus told him before he died, you would be with me in paradise, so that's still under the old covenant.
Take that. Okay. Danae's going to bring us home. No. Oh, no. You're pointing.
No, you were next on the list.
Oh, gotcha. She's an advocate for her mother. Got it. Sorry.
There's no one else. There's no one else.
Go. It's you.
It's you. You are the list.
I am it. Well, I'm sitting here nodding because of Jeremy's question, because of all of our questions, and then what you said about baptism and what Donna said, and it's like, it depends also. You have to assess where you're at as far as whether you're pleasing man or whether you're pleasing God. And sometimes that's hard to figure out because I was raised in a mom that's Episcopalian and a dad that's a Quaker.
Gotcha.
And I felt when I got here, I had never heard the obedience part of the whole thing. Of baptism and what baptism meant. Yeah. I just knew that it was not a sacrament. And in my mind, the baptism didn't save me.
Right.
And that was biblical, what I read in the Bible.
Yeah.
But by telling me I had to be baptized, that made me question my salvation. And I got kind of upset. No, I am a believer. Right. It does not depend on whether I have been baptized or not. Right. And I had to listen to the further teaching. Right. And when we are in the presence of other denominations who believe differently about baptism, then they're going to say, well, why isn't your kid baptized? So there you go.
We're at time. I'm going to make one last statement because I just got the sound guy. If you're dealing with people let me say this and we'll be done. If you're dealing with people who hold to baptismal regeneration, Cornelius is the clearest example to refute that, because you take both passages, Acts 10 and 11 in the outline, because the sequence is clear. The Holy Spirit falls upon them. Then on that basis, they say, who can refuse baptism? And then in 11, as Peter relates it, it's clear. One's the baptism of the Spirit, the other's baptism of water. Once you can establish they're not simultaneous, they're not one and the same thing, then you've cracked the nut. Anyway, that's time. Got to go. Thank you. God bless.